You're listening to the Mad Fictional Imagination Playhouse audio presentation of Happy Valley Reapers by Ryan Scorpio Reese.
Chapter 1. The Midnight Heist. Happy Valley was known far and wide as the most pleasant place on earth to live and ranked in the top 5 places to visit before you die. It was rumoured that the air always carried a faint scent of freshly baked cookies and mowed grass. But like everything else in Happy Valley that carefully maintained perfection, felt more like a mask than a truth. In the stillness of the autumn night, the Vesperwaite mansion loomed like a Gothic sentinel, its spires clawing at the night sky. The mansion stood as a jarring anomaly, a shadowed fortress against the town's manufactured cheer. Its sprawling lawn, trimmed to eerie perfection, was drenched in the kind of darkness that swallowed sound. The moon, timid and waning, peeked shyly from behind a gauze of clouds, offering only the faintest light to guide the 5 figures darting through the shadows. They moved with a cautious rhythm, each step planned but laden with the electric hum of anticipation. These weren't professional thieves. They were the Reapers, Happy Valley's teenage troublemakers who'd built a reputation for politically charged pranks. But tonight wasn't about spray painting manifestos or defacing museum art. Tonight they were aiming higher, literally and figuratively. For years, the Vesperwaites had been the town's untouchables. Old money, deep pockets, even deeper secrets. Their mansion loomed not just physically, but symbolically, a reminder of the stark divide between the haves and the have-nots. The Reapers' mission wasn't about stealing or vandalizing. It was about calling attention to what Happy Valley tried so hard to ignore. The plan was to replace the Vesperwaite's ornate gilded weather vane, a gaudy rooster that spun lazily atop the highest turret, with their own creation, a handcrafted weather vane whose arms pointed to truth, justice, equality, and hope. It wasn't about causing harm, it was about waking the town up to its own hypocrisy. "Are we seriously doing this?" Juju whispered, her voice a blend of skepticism and nerves. She adjusted her grappling hook, the metal glinting faintly in the dim moonlight. Trigby, ever the orchestrator, shot her a look over his shoulder. "Of course we're doing this," he hissed. "We've planned it for weeks. Stick to the plan, and we'll be in and out before anyone notices." His tone was confident, but his hands betrayed him, fumbling with the straps of his makeshift backpack. "Famous last words," Punky muttered, her eyes darting to the mansion's imposing silhouette. "But hey, if we get caught, at least we'll go down as legends." Her voice carried a forced bravado that didn't quite match her white-knuckled grip on her rucksack. Moz grunted in response, the heavy tire iron in his grip reflecting his stoic resolve. He wasn't one for words, but his steady presence was the unspoken glue holding the group together. Beside him, Squirt's small hands gripped his slingshot tightly, the elastic stretched just enough to show he was ready for trouble. The group crouched behind a row of hedges bordering the mansion's lawn. From here, the path to the main building was clear, but it felt like a chasm, the open space vulnerable and exposed. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a sound that would have been comforting anywhere else but here. Trigby motioned for silence and leaned closer to the group. "Okay, listen up. Juju, you get us up to the second-floor balcony with the hook. Moz will handle the locks. Punky, you keep an eye out for ghosts?" Punky interrupted, her voice dripping with mock fear. "Don't start," Trigby snapped, though the sharpness in his voice didn't quite hide his own apprehension. Juju rolled her eyes and stepped forward, her movements deliberate and practiced. In her hands was her latest contraption, a homemade grappling hook launcher cobbled together from repurposed parts. The stock was fashioned from a worn aluminum baseball bat, the mechanism cannibalized from a junked nail gun and portable CO2 compressor. It hummed faintly as she loaded the hook, the crude design vibrating with barely contained tension. She took aim, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. With a soft thunk and a faint whir of unwinding cable, the hook sailed through the air. A metallic clink confirmed it had latched securely onto the wrought iron railing of the balcony above. Juju gave the line a sharp tug, testing its hold. Satisfied, she nodded. "That's set, but hang on," she muttered, pulling a pocket-sized bespoke scanner from her jacket. A small screen blinked to life, its interface bristling with hand-coded overlays. "No alarms tripped yet, but there's some weird interference messing with the signal. Feels off." "Off how?" Moz asked, his brow furrowed. "Like static, but alive. Whatever. It's clear for now, so move." The others exchanged uneasy glances, then turned to the rope. Moz went first, his muscular frame making the climb look almost effortless. The rope groaned faintly under his weight, but his grip was unyielding, his movements steady. Juju followed next, her smaller frame allowing her to scale the wall with nimble precision. Behind her were Punky and Squirt, their breath hitching as they adjusted to the precarious ascent. Trigby brought up the rear, his face pale as he glanced upward and downward in equal measure. The climb wasn't as straightforward as they had hoped. The mansion's facade was cloaked in ivy, its leaves slick from the lingering mist that clung to the air. The ancient stone walls were jagged but brittle. Every foothold seemed to crumble just as their weight settled on it. Cold wind whipped around them, howling with a voice that seemed almost human, a keening wail interspersed with faint, mocking whispers that sent shivers down their spines. "Can anyone else hear that?" Punky whispered, her voice tight with unease. She clung to the rope, pressing herself closer to the wall as if it might shield her from the sound. "Shut up and climb," Moz growled from above. His tone was firm, but there was an edge to it, a subtle acknowledgement that he too could hear the strange sounds carried by the wind. Trigby climbed just below him, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. The plan had seemed foolproof on paper, but now every detail he'd accounted for felt laughably inadequate. He had expected the height to unnerve him, but it was the oppressive energy in the air that really gnawed at his nerves, a heavy, unshakable feeling that they weren't welcome. "I swear it's like this place is alive," Juju muttered from the middle of the group, her dark curls whipping into her face. She dug her fingers into a shallow crevice, her grip holding firm, even as the stone chipped beneath her hand. "Because it is," Squirt murmured from just below her. His small voice trembled, and his wide eyes darted to the deep shadows pooling in the wall's recesses. Normally quick and nimble, Squirt now moved cautiously, his usual confidence replaced by an undercurrent of fear. Trigby craned his neck to look at his brother. "Squirt, I swear, if you start with your ghost stories right now—" "I'm serious," Squirt interrupted, his whisper almost lost to the wind. "Doesn't it feel like it's watching us?" "Hey, both of you," Moz barked from the top of the line. "Focus!" The rope creaked ominously as Punky's foot slipped on the slick ivy. She gasped, flailing for a moment before catching herself, her heart pounding. Moz's hand shot out instinctively, steadying her as she regained her grip. "Careful," he muttered, his eyes flicking to hers. His tone was gruff, but the concern in his gaze softened the reprimand. Inch by inch they pressed on, muscles burning and hearts racing. The wind seemed to grow louder the closer they got to the balcony, its eerie wail punctuated by what sounded like breathy chuckles, just beyond the edge of hearing. Finally, Moz reached the balcony and hoisted himself over the railing. His boots landed with a muted thud on the stone floor. Without missing a beat, he turned and reached down, his strong hands pulling each of them up in turn. When Punky's foot slipped again, he caught her mid-fall, his grip unyielding as he hauled her onto the ledge. One by one they clambered over the railing, collapsing in a heap on the cold stone. For a moment, they sat in silence, catching their breath. Above them, the turret loomed like a sentinel, its shadow stretching long and dark across the balcony. "This better be worth it," Juju muttered, her voice low but steady, as she cast a wary glance back at the rope dangling in the wind. The balcony was narrow, the railing adorned with ornate carvings of twisting vines and snarling gargoyles whose grotesque eyes felt wrong to Juju somehow. This wrongness was supported by the wind that seemed to carry whispers that circled around them, and the faintest vibration hummed through the stone beneath their feet. And she wasn't the only one who felt it. Up close, the mansion's facade was even more imposing, almost as if it was alive, its windows tall and arched like watchful eyes. A faint glow spilled from one of them, and the group instinctively pressed themselves against the wall, their breaths shallow. Trigby peeked inside. The room beyond was a library, its walls lined with shelves stuffed with ancient tomes and artifacts. A fire crackled in the hearth, though no one was in sight. He signalled the others. "All right, Juju, do your thing," Trigby said, trying to inject some authority into his voice. Juju produced the handheld electronic device from her pocket. Her brow furrowed. "What is it?" Punky asked. "I'm still getting that weird interference. If they've got a security system, I can't detect it." "We calling this off?" asked Punky. "No way," Trigby replied, and he signalled to Moz. "We're here to get a job done." Moz nodded and went to work on the glass door, his tire irons slipping under the latch. "Almost there," Moz muttered, his deep voice barely audible. As the lock gave way with a soft click, a strange sensation washed over them, a chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy that none of them could explain. "Did anyone else feel that?" Squirt whispered, his voice trembling. "Shut up," Trigby said quickly, though he glanced over his shoulder as if expecting to see someone or something behind them. Inside, the library smelled of aged leather and wood polish, the scent almost stifling. The library walls were lined with shelf after shelf of leather-bound books, their spines bearing names of laws and ordinances, the paper trail of how the Vesperwaites had shaped Happy Valley into their personal kingdom. The group moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rug beneath them. "Okay, we stick to the plan," Trigby said, his voice low but firm. "The turret staircase is on the far side of the house. Let's move." But as they crossed the room, Punky froze. "Wait," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pointed to a display case near the fireplace. Inside was an ornate golden key, its design intricate and strangely hypnotic. "What are you doing?" Trigby hissed. "Look at it," Punky said, her eyes wide. "That has to be worth a fortune." "We're not here to steal," Juju reminded her, though even she seemed unable to tear her gaze away from the key. Before anyone could stop her, Punky reached out, her fingers brushing the glass. A sudden ear-splitting shriek, like metal being torn apart, ripped through the mansion. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, making the air itself vibrate. The fire in the hearth flared unnaturally high, casting wild shadows that danced across the walls like writhing figures.
You've been listening to the Mad Fictional Imagination Playhouse audio presentation of Happy Valley Reapers by Ryan Scorpio Reese. If you've enjoyed yourself, consider hitting like and subscribe, and ring the notification bell to be alerted to new video and audio content when they drop. Also, if you would be so kind as to leave us a comment, we would greatly appreciate it. We need to let the algorithm know that this channel exists. Thanks for listening. Ciao, till next now.